Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I'm your host.
And I'm here again to help explore our sources.
Today, we're diving into something you've almost certainly seen, probably everywhere. The explosion of these ultra-cheap online shopping sites, especially the ones like Temu and Shein shipping direct from China.
Yeah, they've just mushroomed, haven't they? Popping up in social media feeds, ads, everywhere. They seem to promise these unbelievable deals.
Absolutely. And they've really changed how a lot of people shop almost overnight, it feels like.
The prices are just jaw-droppingly low. Millions are clicking buy.
Right. So our mission today, looking at all the sources you've gathered for us, is to get beneath the surface. We want to understand the full picture. Why are they so popular? How do they get those prices so low?
And critically, what are the potential hidden costs? The impacts that maybe aren't so obvious when you're just looking at that cheap price tag? The sources point to some surprising things.
Definitely. Stuff like, complex algorithms predicting trends instantly, potential safety issues with products, even big ripples through the global economy. Okay, let's unpack this.
So first off, the growth is just staggering, right? The sources say orders from these Chinese platforms quadrupled in the U.S. alone, just in the past year.
Quadrupled, that's enormous. And when you dig into the why, it's not just the price, although obviously that's huge.
Right. The sources suggest there's this other element too. Shoppers talk about feeling like smart, like they're hacking the system or finding a loophole. That shop like a millionaire slogan, it really hits that nerve, doesn't it?
Mostly. It turns it into a bit of a game, a treasure hunt.
Yeah.
And we see that in the stories from people the sources talk to, like Emily, 38, from Indianapolis.
Over 100 Temu orders in 2 years. That's a lot.
It is. She talks about figuring out the rhythm of the sales, feeling like the algorithm gets her. Her method is, pretty strategic. Load up the cart, wait for price drops, then buy just enough to hit free shipping.
And she buys all sorts of things: makeup, home gadgets, textiles. Her take on quality is interesting, too. It's really variable. Some polyester pants looked old after 3 wears, she said.
Yeah, but other things lasted a year, still going strong. She likes finding unique styles you can't get locally and prefers clicking online to, crowded malls.
But she insists it's not impulse buying. She frames it as only getting things she actually needs.
Then there's Jessica, 42, Minneapolis. She's been shopping this way for almost a decade, mostly Shein. Spends about $50 a month.
She likes just browsing the new stuff, jewelry, clothes, and she waits to fill her cart for discounts, even shops with her sisters to get bulk deals, like 30 nail sets for $2.50.
Wow. And her view on quality. She feels Shein is often pretty comparable to big retailers she knows. Some earrings lasted years.
But she does see differences. Accessories can be hit or miss, she says. And she finds Temu quality generally lower, mentions thin plastic things just breaking.
She also thrifts, but sees these apps as fun and cheap. And she passes stuff on to cousins, so it feels less wasteful to her.
These stories really paint a picture of how deeply embedded this shopping has become for some.
And the platforms are built for it. The sources talk about incredibly sophisticated algorithms. They track every click, how long you look at an item.
And they mix that user data with real-time social media trends. There's a Bloomberg report mentioned if a color pops up in, say, 100 Instagram posts in an hour.
Shein can have a new collection in that color, designed, made, and listed online within 48 hours.
48 hours, that speed is just unthinkable for traditional fashion cycles.
It fuels that constant newness, which social media then amplifies like crazy. TikTok unboxings are huge, right? Especially for Gen Z, Gen Alpha.
Oh, yeah? Best part of the week, my Shein package. That whole vibe. It creates excitement, desire, this shared experience.
And the incentives are powerful. Free shipping is a big one. One source found 42% of young women add extra items just to avoid paying for shipping.
Definitely. Plus the gamified stuff, the roulette wheels for discounts, app points. Analysts say these are super effective, especially with younger shoppers used to game mechanics.
And they're getting faster. Temu is reportedly building warehouses near U.S. airports for 3-4-day delivery. Shein already has U.S. distribution centers, employing thousands.
Okay, so that covers the allure. People are hooked. But how on earth do they make things so cheap? What's the real story behind that price tag?
Right. This is where it gets complex. The sources suggest it's a combination of things.
What's fascinating here is it really is a mix. It starts fundamentally with inexpensive manufacturing in China. That's the base layer.
Significantly cheaper than many other places.
And the sources are pretty direct about why it can be so cheap. They point to concerns about ignored labor standards and even potential forced labor.
Yeah, there are specific mentions, including from U.S. authorities in 2023, connecting some items on platforms like Temu to regions and reports concerning Uyghur workers. The sources present this as a potential factor in keeping those production costs down.
On top of that, the sources mention government subsidies for exports from China, which can further lower the price point for international buyers.
And then there's the power the platforms themselves have over the sellers.
Huge power. The sources describe algorithms basically dictating prices. Seller lists a phone case for $8. The platform might say, nope, the optimal price is $7.20.
And if the seller doesn't comply,
Their products can get buried in search results or even delisted. It forces them to accept the lower margins.
they call it an innovative direct-from-factory model, cutting out middlemen. But the sources suggest another big piece is navigating or maybe getting around international tariffs and taxes.
Yeah, this whole area of customs loopholes seems key, according to the reports. There's an EU example called Procedure 42.
How does that work, basically?
Well, simplifying it, goods enter one EU country destined for another. VAT, the value-added tax, is supposed to be paid in the final destination country.
Right.
But the sources allege that often it just doesn't get paid, maybe through shell companies or complex paperwork that makes it hard to track. There are also mentions of illegal diversions, like shipments being rerouted through places like Poland, potentially to avoid checks or taxes.
And then there was that import duty exemption, the de minimis value. In the EU, it was shipments under €150.
Right, which led to sellers splitting big orders into lots of tiny packages, each falling below that tax threshold.
The US had a similar $800 threshold, but that specific one was removed under the Trump administration, adding a big 30% tariff. But the sources indicate these platforms still find ways to manage or offset these costs. It's not always clear how exactly.
So putting it all together from the sources, rock-bottom manufacturing costs, possibly linked to troubling labor issues, government support, platform algorithms squeezing sellers, and exploiting or allegedly bypassing global customs rules. That's the recipe for the low price.
Okay. So if that's how they get the price down, it raises that crucial question you mentioned earlier. Are these products actually safe?
This is a really important point raised in the sources. They contrast the platform's claims of quality control with what independent tests have actually found.
And what did they find?
Some concerning results. A key one cited is a 2024 U.S. Consumer Federation test. It found over half the items tested from Temu and Shein had heavy metals lead, chromium, nickel above U.S. safety limits.
Above the legal limits. And these aren't trivial things, right? The sources spell out the risks.
Exactly. Chromium silicate is carcinogenic. Lead damages the nervous system, especially in kids. Nickel is a common allergen, causing skin reactions for many.
And that's not all, is it? There was another study mentioned.
Yes, a 2022 Greenpeace Germany study. It found phthalates, or formaldehyde, in 15% of the Shein products they tested, even in kids' clothes.
Phthalates, formaldehyde.
Yep.
What are the risks there, according to the sources?
They're linked to hormone disruption, things like affecting puberty or fertility, increased cancer risk, and they also pollute the environment when clothes are washed or discarded.
How are people reacting when they hear about this?
It varies. Some shoppers dismiss it if they haven't personally had a problem, like a rash. Others might only make the connection later if issues arise.
But a really crucial point the sources make is about oversight, or the lack thereof.
Precisely. Big retailers in the US or EU have legal duties. They have to follow chemical rules, report violations to agencies like the CPSC, conduct recalls if needed. There are safety nets.
And these platforms.
The sources suggest they often operate outside those established systems. Consumers might just assume products are vetted and safe. But that assumption might be misplaced here. That safety layer often isn't there in the same way.
That's a huge difference. It's not just about if a risky chemical is present, but whether the systems are in place to catch it and protect consumers.
Exactly. Now, zooming out again, let's look at the bigger picture impacts. Beyond the individual product or the wallet, what about the planet, the workers, other businesses?
Here's where it gets really interesting. The environmental cost is starkly highlighted in the sources. Shein, for example, 82% synthetic fibers in their clothes in 2023.
Which means huge CO2 emissions during production, microplastic pollution from washing, and these materials take decades, centuries even, to break down. Plus, they're very hard to recycle effectively.
And then the labor conditions again. That public eye report mentioned workers, mostly women, doing 12, sometimes 18-hour days, minimal rest.
It creates this real tension for consumers, doesn't it? The sources capture that inner conflict.
Yeah, like Rachel, feeling overwhelmed by climate change news and using this shopping almost like a rebellion against feeling powerless, trying not to think too hard about the impact.
Or Monica comparing it to eating meat. knowing there might be suffering involved, overworked people in this case. But the desire for the cheap product wins out sometimes. She sort of makes peace with the contradiction.
And Samantha, admitting she tells herself it's no different from H&M and balances it with secondhand shopping, but knows deep down it's a convenient story.
That cognitive dissonance is powerful. But importantly, the sources also show people actively pushing back.
Right. Joanna, 36, in Madison. She consciously avoids fast fashion altogether, cites the profit focus, the disregard for people and planet, the sheer overproduction.
Getting a mortgage apparently shifted her perspective towards long-term value. Now she thrifts, looks for quality secondhand, finds things like a used Burberry coat. Still expensive, but acquired differently, doing what she feels she can.
And Natalie, 28, Pennsylvania, avoids them mainly because the quality is often poor, stuff just ends up in landfill fast. She focuses on durability, shocks resale sites like Poshmark.
She tried talking to friends about it, but got responses like, if it falls apart, it's just an excuse to buy something new. That really shows the challenge in changing mindsets.
And the impact goes beyond conscience. It's hitting actual businesses. Natalie's uncle's sewing workshop, struggling because clients go for cheaper Asian production.
There's also Andrew Lewis from Stitch Tech, a sewing machinery company. He says business is way down, orders just vanish. He directly blames the enormous impact of platforms like Temu.
It's a massive disruption. Catherine Reynolds, mentioned in the sources, points out how opaque these platforms are often. No U.S. offices, minimal lobbying, hard to even contact for press, makes them hard to understand, let alone regulate.
And Shein is specifically credited with contributing to the downfall of chains like Forever 21, just overwhelming them with thousands of new items daily.
And now, traditional retailers are trying to copy them. H&M, Reserved, losing ground to even cheaper players like Sensei. They're not just mimicking fast fashion, but selling all the other random stuff too, like AliExpress.
But regulatory pressure is building. The EU is considering ditching those low-value tax exemptions. France is banning ultra-fast fashion ads, adding eco-taxes.
The U.S. removed that $800 de minimis rule, adding tariffs. But enforcement is complex. Even local European platforms like Allegro are trying to favor local sellers who face stricter rules.
Still, the sources are realistic about shopping better. Thrifting takes time, buying local is expensive, made in the USA doesn't automatically guarantee ethical labor.
And high price doesn't always mean high quality either.
Yeah.
The University of Leeds study found expensive clothes can wear out just as fast. It's complicated. Not all Asian factories are the same. Many big brands use certified ones, but tracing it all is hard for consumers.
So yeah, we land in this really complex space. The incredible appeal of convenience and low prices on one side.
Versus these potential hidden costs to our health, the environment, workers' rights, other businesses on the other.
It's a huge, tangled issue that touches almost everyone now. You've scrolled the ads, maybe you've ordered, maybe you've just wondered how it's all possible.
We've tried to pull together what the sources say to give you a clearer view of the whole system.
Yeah, this deep dive certainly shows the story is much, much bigger than just the sticker price.
Exactly. So here's something to mull over, a final thought based on everything we've unpacked from these sources. Considering all of it, from chemicals in clothes to the economic shifts affecting businesses down the street, how do we navigate this? How do we find value, express ourselves, but also stay mindful of these less visible costs? What's the role of the platforms themselves, the regulators, and us as consumers in this rapidly shifting world of global shopping?
A lot to think about.
Definitely. We really hope this deep dive helps shed some light on this complex topic for you. If you found it valuable, please do give us a like and consider subscribing to the channel. It genuinely helps us continue bringing you these explorations.